This is the RPM Podcast, starring Eric Brennan,
Give me all your balloons.
Sam Ballard Jr.,
I'm not normally a praying man, but if you're up there, please save me, Superman.
Neil Rutt III,
We wish to welcome you so much, Finland.
Nick Rendo,
Typical of Italian cars. They wait until you really need them, and then they go wrong.
and Josh Matthews.
All BMWs are driven by people who are psychologically unfit to drive anything more powerful than an electric razor.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the RPM Podcast. As the lovely introduction mentioned, I'm Eric Brennan, joined, depending on how you're viewing, my buddy Sam Ballard, who happens to be on my left, and also Joshua Matthews, who happens to be below me. You can make whatever jokes you want. Hi, Josh.
Yeah,
How are you?
You think everyone's below you.
So, no, not always. Not always. Usually I am on the bottom, and as they say, blank rolls downhill. So, I have a couple absences. Nick Rendo is back on the milk carton. We don't know where he is or what he's doing. Probably taking pictures somewhere. So, Nick, we love you. We miss you. We hope you come back home soon, lost puppy. And also, our buddy Neil Rutt III is
Happy
not here this week,
birthday!
but for a very good reason. Happy birthday, Neil. We love you. We miss you. We hope you're celebrating with all those who are important to you. Neil was, in fact, ready to go last night, but somebody who will not be named ended up changing the schedule at the last minute. And so that kind of threw things for a tizzy. So
If you're not listening on YouTube, Josh Matthews pointed directly towards Eric Brennan.
Neil tried to be here. That's all that matters. But we actually had this conundrum last year when we began to decide that we were going to roll with the RPM podcast through the off season. We said, well, what are we going to talk about? What is there to talk about? So, well, that was the first thing that we assumed, that there wasn't going to be much to talk about. So we decided to go ahead and try anyway. And we actually probably had more fun because of how lighthearted the off seasons are. And really, it leads to a lot more personal stories and ventures amongst the three of us. And I think that this week will be more of the same. However, there was a lot of racing that went on this past weekend, and it was in numerous different locations. And we're going to start with the stock car portion of the racing calendar, and we'll trickle our way down to the local stuff that happened, such as the indoor race in Trenton. With that, there was a big league driver who made headlines this past weekend at the biggest super late model race in the country, the Snowball Derby, where drama began off the very start. Johnny Sauter, who is a contender for the Truck Series Championship, was trying to win that particular race, ended up having a loose oil line in practice, then went out and crashed his car in practice, attempted to make a deal with Kyle Busch to potentially run, continuing on in an attempt to compete in that race. However, the team ended up loading up and going home shortly thereafter.
That sounded kind of like Blewett at the with the dirt mod at Turkey Derby.
Yes, very similar. Just it happened a few days prior to the event taking place. And if you go to our friends at speed51.com, you will check out an interview with Sauter where he outlined the 7 Ps. You can go to the Urban Dictionary and look up what that is, but it's really good. In fact, no, it's family enough we can say it. Prior proper planning prevents piss poor for performance. I stumbled over that twice, but that's what Sauter said in his interview, and that's why he ended up going home.
That's going to be
however,
one of your
driver,
demo clips.
It is. Or my first tattoo, depending on how you look at it. Who knows?
Piss performance, LOL.
One driver who did not go
on
home.
me.
One driver who did not go home and stayed and stuck it out for the duration of the race, despite qualifying outside the top 10, was Kyle Busch, your 2015 Cup Series champion. And gentlemen, watching Kyle have the success that he did brought us back to when we saw Kyle Larson running some sprint car races mid-season. Remember, he had that big old hot streak, and then he actually went out and tried to run the Knoxville Nationals in August, finished second, then went to Michigan and won the Cup race there on a late race restart. And everybody was praising Kyle Busch. It seems like the public perception. Yes, Kyle Larson. Sorry, Sam. Good catch. It seems like the public perception of people viewing Kyle doing what he did and dropping down to a lower series and competing and adding more eyeballs and more attention on a race such as the Snowball Derby is not being received as warmly as what Larson did in the middle of the year. And I'm curious if you guys feel the same way, and if so, why, Josh?
I think it's because Larson's much newer to this, and because he's been known to be running all these smaller events, kind of like Tony Stewart was doing, whereas Kyle Busch does it here and there, but other than that, he's mainly with his NASCAR. Because I mean, Kyle Busch is busy running all three series every weekend, it seems. So I think a lot of it is the fans, aside from just this general hatred for Kyle Busch, which is just like the Jeff Gordon hatred that was there for so long, is going to wear away. It's already starting to. Yeah, I mean, it's fun to love to hate him here and there, but you know how I feel on Kyle Busch. I think it's really just a lot of people like to hate him, and because he just came out of the woodwork and blew everyone out of the water, whereas Kyle Larson is doing this more regularly. So he seems like more of a
Sam,
hero.
yeah, and I mean, Sam, perhaps the number of races that Bush is running compared to Larson on a local level, maybe that's why Bush hasn't really tipped the scale that much. In fact, there was one thing that I did come up. Apparently, there was a helmet being passed around, which, come to think of it, is something that I wish we did at like Turkey Derby, where you had all the tour type modified sign a helmet, and then you put it in like the Garden State Fitness Stock Car Club Museum for a year, and then you raffle it off to somebody. Just little things that. If you have all 37 drivers who took the green flag with the Snowball Derby sign this helmet, but apparently the one driver who didn't was Kyle Busch. And Matt Weaver, who is a reporter for, I believe it's Cars. I'll look up my source in a minute. He actually said that Busch declined to sign it, and Busch responded on Twitter saying, "I never seen this helmet before, and why would I decline to sign something like this?" So it seemed like there was a little bit of a personal agenda on that sense, not in the reporting aspect, but in the general perception of Kyle coming to run this race, take the trophy, take the check, and go home.
I
But
saw
Sam,
a
isn't that his
conflicting
job?
post, though, Eric. Sorry to interrupt, but I saw a different post. I think it was actually Dan Thomas posted that he actually had taken the extra time to sign a lot of autographs for fans
Right.
and talk
Yep.
to them or shake hands.
I've seen
and
that as well.
selfies, which is going completely against this helmet statement. So I don't know. I feel like it's fake news. One of them anyway.
Yeah, Matt Weaver, reporter for Auto Week USA, also went down to cover the Snowball Derby this past week, and he was the one who said that Bush declined. Bush later refuted. And thus, but again, it still kind of creates this buzz of good guy, bad guy. Like, Sam, when you see somebody of Kyle Busch's stature coming back down, and I use the term back down because let's face it, the vast majority of the guys who are running that race, they're trying to get to where Kyle Busch is on a career level. That's where Chase Elliott got a win there in 2011, I believe. Christopher Bell had some success there. Eric Jones has had success. In fact, Eric Jones really captured a lot of the attention of the racing world because of how well he ran in a super late model at an event like the Snowball Derby. So when you see a guy like Kyle Busch come down to that level, is it good for racing? Is it good for the race? Is it good for the drivers' teams involved? Or is it kind of like a poo-poo thing that he's just coming in to either have some fun or take the money and go home?
Poo-poo. I think it's a poo-poo thing just because I wanted to say that.
There you go.
Think about this. How many fans weren't planning on going to see the Snowball Derby? Because it's Florida, and it's really, really, really hot down there right now for this time of year.
Ugh.
They probably don't want to bother sitting outside, right? But they heard Kyle Busch was going, and they said, hey, if Kyle Busch is going to go, either he's going to win the race, going to be a good race, or he's going to wreck half the field. So why not go? I mean, half the people probably were there just to see Kyle Busch race a late model. Because, I mean, chances like that don't come by very often. Exactly what you said, Eric. So how can you go and see him race and then be mad because he won? That's like going to Turkey Derby being mad that, Ryan Preece wins. Oh, crap. These NASCAR guys, man, come up here and win all these damn races.
And I think, Sam, you touched on a point that I want to make personally. I think back to when Tony Stewart was running the World of Outlaws shows up in New Egypt Speedway. Like, when I heard that Stewart was going to be there, it's like, oh, I got to get in the car and go. Whereas if I didn't hear that Stewart was going to be there, no disrespect to any of the other drivers who were in the field,
Or New Egypt.
may not make the one exactly. I may not make the 1 hour trip down there to watch the race because that star power wouldn't be there. Look for somebody who got home from work late, was filthy, wasn't sure, was on the fence, didn't have anybody to go with. That was what tipped me over the scale.
You don't
honest.
get dirty at work. Don't lie.
Yeah,
Lying.
you're filthy when you go to bed.
I shower every night. But it is, and also another thing. How many times do we hear people at the water cooler talks or local bar discussions say driver A doesn't deserve the Cup ride, driver B doesn't deserve to be in the Cup Series? Well, I think there's no better proof in the pudding than going back to where you came from, or back where these kids are scratching and clawing to try to get to that top level, and proving you can still get it done. I mean, it kind of justifies your worth in the big leagues, as far as I'm concerned, with Kyle coming down and winning these races. I don't know if that makes any sense. If you get what I'm trying to say, because if Kyle stayed in that level of racing for that long, and he had this success and he proved that he could still have, despite not running these cars that often, I think he kind of speaks for himself in terms of why he deserves the opportunity he has with Joe Gibbs. So I don't mind seeing this at all. I like it. I like seeing drivers drop back down and compete at this level. Makes me happy.
I mean, think about like Kevin Harvick in the Truck Series, and Mike Skinner when he used to run Cup and then Truck. I mean, a lot of these guys before NASCAR, before Kyle Busch came into NASCAR and decided to clean out all the tracks. Mm-hmm. Mark Martin did it. Everyone was okay with Mark Martin, Carl Edwards, Brad Keselowski. Everybody's okay with that until Kyle Busch started doing it. Really doing it. Really doing it. Let's be honest now. Carl Edwards, Greg Biffle, they were clean. Matt Kenseth, Mark Martin. These guys were cleaning out house before Kyle Busch came along, and everyone was okay with it. Why? Because they're likable. They're more likable drivers. Kyle Busch comes around. Oh well.
I mean, you could almost say that Kyle Busch single-handedly was responsible of the new implementation of the rules, where they're limiting starts for competitors. I mean, I don't know. They called it the Kyle Busch rule at first, Sam.
I think a lot of people lost respect for Kyle Busch when he won that Nashville race and he smashed a trophy with the guitar. I think a lot of people realized, like, hey, if that was Ricky Stenhouse at the time, he would have cherished that trophy, and you're smacking it because you're being a jerk.
Probably would have been next to him at his bedside. I mean, it's well, the evolution of Kyle Busch and the continuation of the short track will be fun to watch. I don't think they were dating at that time. So this your TMZ edition of the RPM podcast. That will continue on. Speaking of short track racing, a prominent NASCAR short track, which hosts 2 Cup Series races a year, made a rather large change, not to the racing surface, but underneath a section of the racing surface.
I think it's going to change the surface now.
I agree. They actually dug up a section of the end of the front straightaway going into turn number 1 to widen the pedestrian tunnel that leads you to the infield. Now, they're not repaving the whole track, so they're going to have to pave that one strip. We saw what the strip did at Pocono, but that was for an entire corner. I don't know if this strip of asphalt will make a difference on the racing surface or not. Sam, I see you shaking your head, so I'm curious what you have to say.
This is going to be like a little like patches people put little guys keep unshaved underneath the little chin.
Soul patch.
I call it the pedo satch.
Well,
think about it. As a fan, I've been to Richmond. Richmond's probably one of the better tracks NASCAR had. I say had because they just screwed it up. I don't understand. These tracks complain they don't sell tickets. They're taking down grandstands because, well, we're not going to film, so why bother having them?
Right.
They do stupid crap like this. Stupid crap like this. Turn 1 and 2 is never going to be the same now.
I think they're going to, when they have finished the tunnel construction and they backfill and compact it all, I think they will mill beyond for, let's say, even 100 feet either side and try to, instead of just doing that straight cut and putting asphalt right there, I think they're going to blend it more to try to take the edge off.
They're better off leaving a little bump so when they go into the turn, they at least like upset the car. The cars are going to be so great. Look at Pocono. It took 2 or 3 years until that strip decided to wear out. This I mean, granted, this really is going to have no advantage, but you never know. You never know what Kyle Larson can do with this. Kyle Larson needs to find his way around everything. Make it into a speed bump.
That would be interesting. I don't have the dimensions of how big this patch is going to be. But what I do know is I will cite something that Dale Earnhardt Jr. said, and that is going to lead into our next big league racing story. Jr. said that he believes that Richmond International Raceway should go back to applying the sealer every year, which gave it the track that super black texture to it and that green smoke whenever a car got turned around. And it kind of helped make it a track that favored the bottom lane. I mean, the last time the Cup cars were there, they were running all the way out against the fence, which that's not what Richmond's supposed to be about. I mean, it's cool. It's not bad. That's not Richmond.
Why are these tracks going to spend all this money to enhance that track specifically's performance when NASCAR could just change the car and be like, whoa, 10 years ago, you never had these issues. I'm serious though. 10 years ago, you never had these issues. Why? Because the cars were hard to drive and the tracks were hard to drive. Nothing physically changed besides this little pedo stash going on for Richmond right now in the track in the last 10 years. Am I wrong? No, I'm not wrong.
No, you're accurate, and that also further leads into the next discussion on a broader scale, Sam. And I'll cite an article written by Kelly Crandall, who's a writer for Racer.com, where she actually put up a bit of a winner to-do list for NASCAR. And you could go to Racer.com and read the article under Kelly Crandall's exact editorial page. But the first thing she mentions, Sam, is to start with the car. And she points out the fact that she could be wrong, but when it comes to getting eyeballs back on the sport, the first thought would be that the product must be a little bit better. Even though NASCAR continues to make strides on the car itself, she feels that considering to the naked eye with the competition, that they're just not there yet. The cars still are not able to run, and although we may never be able to eliminate the necessity of clean air, she still believes, and I agree, that there is more work to be done. And it seems like that any bit of downforce they took away over the last few years with the aero package changes, the teams have just mechanically engineered ways to get it back. So it doesn't really make that big of a difference on the racing products. And I'm not sure if you guys feel the same way.
I think I speak for 100% of race fans. NASCAR needs to get more short tracks, and more short tracks. There is no excuse. Watkins Glen, I know you guys are listening. With all due respect, there is no reason why Watkins Glen is selling out. It should be the opposite. Bristol should be selling out. Martinsville should be selling out. Homestead, the championship race weekend, that stuff should be selling out. But instead, people are going to Watkins Glen. People are going to Darlington because we're only going there one time a year. And at the end of the day, that's it. All the other tracks their attendance is ridiculously low and everyone's pulling out. So NASCAR needs to fix more short tracks, and they need to fix their car to make them harder to drive and less downforce. But then again, why should NASCAR listen to their fans? Because it's not like their fans have been paying their bill for the last 50 years for the damn sport.
Now, Josh, something else that Kelly Crandall mentioned is something that Sam just alluded to. Then after you are able to figure out how to make the cars a little bit more racy, you revert to the schedule. But the problem is, NASCAR agreed in 2016 that many of the tracks that are on the schedule now will be locked into 5-year agreements that are good through 2020. That's a problem. I don't think tracks deserve that much commitment, especially with under the current television contract, they're getting 65% of the TV money. So why should they be assured of 5 years of business if they're making the vast majority of the television money on a calendar year anyway? Josh, do you too believe that the schedule is the easiest way to fix NASCAR racing product, or do you think it runs deeper than that?
I think it's more about the cars, and I think that certain tracks like Bristol and Talladega and Daytona. I mean, those are going to be fan favorites, and have some of the biggest crowds regardless. So, just given 20-year contracts at this point, I'm okay with that. Other tracks might have to work and earn it. Yeah, we should have some more short tracks. They've provided a lot of great racing this year. The fans have spoken about that. But I think some of it is, I think you can keep a couple mile-and-a-half tracks. I know Eric Graham can't stand them, and I'm not saying they're the best. But I think a few of them can stay. You just can't have 90% of the tracks be mile-and-a-half cookie-cutter tracks. Okay?
Why do we go to Kansas?
I don't know.
Twice a year.
Why? Why is Kansas even on the
But
schedule? What is in Kansas?
But
No
at the
offense to our
time-
Kansas listeners. No offense.
No, but at the time, go ahead, Josh.
I would say you can keep certain tracks. Like I'm not a huge Homestead fan, but it can provide some interesting racing at the very least. Phoenix is actually kind of a good show. Some of those tracks that don't seem like they would be that good actually do work out. But like Las Vegas, why? Indy's been a problem. I know they're working on that with the Arrow, but so I'll let them try. But Indy hasn't been a good show. Texas, leave it to IndyCar, please. It's just those tracks, should go. So yeah, that can play a role, but I really think it's going to come down to making the cars, harder to drive, or taking away some of the liberties that the teams have to build the cars to be glued to the track.
Crandall actually goes on to continue to point out other amendments that she thinks should be made to the schedule, such as shorter races or a shorter season in general, or whatever may come in between. She also goes on. Yeah, she also goes on to make 3 more points, which one of them I cannot scream loud enough. Find a way to hire Dale Earnhardt Jr., somebody who has a fresh perspective on the sport, using her words directly, somebody who is not afraid to speak his mind. His thoughts are relatively creative. And I'm not saying this, gentlemen, because I'm trying to impress the Earnhardt fan base, but I think somebody like him being atop the management side of the sport would be a great idea. Sam, you're laughing at me.
Can't we just leave Dale Earnhardt Jr. alone? He wants to go make babies and work on race cars. And
First of all,
everyone's
who
like,
doesn't?
I think.
It just popped in there.
Anyway,
Well, he's going to be around the sport no matter what.
I don't disagree with Eric on this because, at the very least, how many fans would really just stop if NASCAR did something and it was Junior's idea? Whether or not it actually worked out, so many fans would be like, "No, it was Junior's idea. It's great." So
Right.
it would stop some of the complaining at the very least. It may not fix it, but it'll shut people
Junior's
up.
going to be like, let's add more downforce to the car. Junior, that's a great idea. No one ever thought about that in NASCAR.
Well, and here's the thing: when you look at somebody like Dale Earnhardt Jr., when you look at Junior and you look at everything that he's been involved in, and also just how well grounded he is and how passionate he is about I mean, remember, this is a guy who used to host a television series on Speed literally called Back in the Day, because of the amount of love and respect that he had, for the yesteryear of the sport, and how important it is to try to bring that back to respect your fan base.
There's your idea right there. He should bring that back and show 2004 to 2007 races and be like, hey, NASCAR, remember this 10 years ago when you packed the stands and I was winning races? Not really. Junior really wasn't winning races that time. I mean, he never really began. He didn't. Oh, different time.
In 2004, he won 4 or 5 events in 1 year.
Wow.
One playoff point for every animal hit on the track.
I will cite a basketball reference here, though. Phil Jackson, who is one of the best basketball coaches in recent memory. In fact, he won multiple titles with the Los Angeles Lakers. New York Knicks decided to bring him in to run the team operations, and he failed miserably. Just because somebody was good at one particular part of their sport doesn't mean they're guaranteed to succeed in a managerial position or at a higher level just because of what they're able to do on a lower standard.
Are you saying that Dale Earnhardt Jr. could actually risk making himself look like an ass?
That is my only concern.
But
even if you don't
Dirty
go
Mo Radio, Junior Motorsports, look what he's done for Nationwide. He has a bar about 20 minutes from my college. I mean, that argument is almost as irrelevant as your love life, Eric Brennan.
Well, while that reference may be true, I got dumped. The point is, and I still think that Junior would do a fantastic job if offered the opportunity to try to clean NASCAR up. If anything, just take Junior and have him take Brian France's position as part of being in the public eye. Because did you guys see the ring presentation with Brian France and Martin Truex Jr. at the awards banquet?
No, I heard about this. Is this where he was drunk or something?
It was the most awkward handoff in history of anything, of a ring from one boy to another, of a handoff of a football. It was just he literally turned his back and just kind of gave the ring to Truex and just stormed off the stage as if Truex killed his dog or something. it was the most bizarre transition of anything I've ever seen in my life.
I have to
that
see
guy.
This.
First of all, Brian, I don't know where Brian France should be in the sport regardless, but get him out of the public eye, please. Just get somebody to take his place in terms of doing these things, because it's obviously not doing him or the sport any good. That's my rant for the day. So hire Junior to just do that. The last thing that Kelly Grandal touched on in this article, again at racermagazine.com, reevaluate the charter system. Folks, Daytona is 78 days away. And there's stories coming out now, particularly about Front Row Racing, about how there was a charter that they got from BK Racing that may or may not have been owned by BK Racing. It may have been owned by a Virginia-based bank. I mean, this stuff was made to add value to the teams. It hasn't done it.
It's a made-up
Bob Coughlin
thing.
got his money, and he's gone.
It's not even like a real paper deed to a house. It's like, oh, no, you guys got a charter. I mean, it's
Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin for race teams. That's exactly what it is. All right, the NASCAR charter system is Bitcoin.
This charter system is like sex when you're drunk. It sounds like a really, really good idea. And when you're in the middle of doing it, like, well, wait a minute, now we're making some money. Let's do this. And then when you wake up, you're like, oh, crap. I'm in a lawsuit that I didn't realize I was in.
How's bragging camp going?
Notice how I got awkwardly quiet. Yes. The answer is yes. And I will leave it there. So again, that article by Kelly Crandall at Racing.com, great winner wish list.
Eric Brennan, to continue hating on you, make it strike 3 right here. Since when do you put your women and your racing together?
I usually don't, but I'm having Vietnam flashbacks with the references you just made. So with that, I'm going to kindly request that that'll be the 8th. But we're going to take a break. When we come back on the other side of the RPM podcast, I have no idea how long we've been in this first segment, but I need a bottle of water. And
we're going to get fist deep with Eric Brennan.
When we come back on the other side, some brief open wheel news. Formula E kicked off this past weekend, which is pretty much one of your only national or international winter racing series to watch, along with Supercross. They'll be starting in January. We'll fill you in on what happened there, maybe tell you our thoughts on electric racing as a whole and its place now that they're about 4 seasons in. And also, we are going to give you all the details from the sweet life that Josh and I were able to experience in Trenton to the on-track action as well, and a whole bunch more that happened on a local level. You are listening to the RPM podcast with Sam, Josh, and Eric Brennan, and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Send beer.
All right, this is Eric Graham from the RPM Podcast. Josh and Eric Brennan won't leave me alone until I do one of these read things. So, follow us at Facebook. Either search RPM Podcast, go to facebook.com/Racing Podcast New Jersey. Hopefully this sounds freaking organic enough for Josh because he won't leave me the hell alone about it. But here's your read. Follow us on Facebook. Do it now.
Welcome back to the RPM Podcast. Josh Matthews in the Matthews Family Studio. Sam Ballard coming to you live from UNCC.
CCC.
Wait, is it? I said UNCC.
He said it right this time.
I'm trying to fix my shoe right now and make it all nonchalant. Okay.
I'll give you a clap,
Brennan,
Eric.
coming to you from the lovely Staten Island, New York. And speaking of locations, I just want to give a quick mention to any of our West Coast listeners. All of those of you who may be out in the Los Angeles area affected by these terrible, terrible wildfires that have taken place. If you haven't seen it, there are videos of people just typically driving into Los Angeles, going to work, and it looks out of this scene like a scene from Armageddon. It is unbelievable how destructive these fires are, and it sounds like that the weather conditions are making things a lot worse, and we just want everyone to know out there, especially all of our friends in the West Coast racing community, that we are thinking about them because it's tough, and it's just, again, it's almost fictional to think that what you're seeing is actually real, and it really is real, and it's terrifying. And our thoughts and prayers are with everybody out there, and we just want to let that all be known. As tough as it may be to shift gears from that, keeping the theme going with the little international flavoring, we had Formula E in Hong Kong this weekend kick off their 2017 to 18 season, and man, it was crazy.
Who got the pole?
The election. I'd have to go back and watch because the driver who did have the pole. And I don't think it was Sam Bird. I think it was the driver who finished second, and the name is slipping my mind, and I'm trying to do it without looking it up.
I'm at the same time. I watched the video like 3 times.
Yeah, I was trying to filibuster. I believe it was the driver. I believe it was John Eric Verne who ended up winning the pole and spinning around backwards.
It says here, Rosenquist.
Felix Rosenquist ended up winning the second race. The race 1, Sam Bird ended up getting by John Eric Verne under green to take the lead. And then if you're not familiar with Formula E, electric format, electric cars that are racing, they haven't built the batteries of the cars to the point where they could last the duration of an entire race. In Hong Kong's position, it was a 43-lap race. So the cars would come in when they used up all their energy in their first cars, right around the lap 20 to 23-lap mark, and they would have to come in for a car swap. Well, Sam Bird comes in, overcooks the tires, nearly kills a couple of crewmen, crashes into the garage barrier, gets out of the car. The other team members get out, and they put the car back. Well, the officials decided that Bird has to serve a drive-through penalty for this, which is fair. Bird built up a big enough lead that when he served a drive-through penalty, he still came out the race lead and won the season opener for Formula E. Then we got to do it all over again the following day on Sunday, and it was Daniel Abt for the newly formed Audi team who ended up having a good run there. And he ended up getting his first ever win. However, a technical infringement after the race was over got him disqualified from that, and it gave the win to Felix Rosenqvist, who Sam is still struggling to learn how to say his name. Rosenqvist did get an IndyCar start, and he was rumored to be going to Ganassi before Ed Jones took the spot. But Rosenqvist ended up getting the win, and he had to come back from a self-spin earlier in the race as well. So we're 2 races into the Formula E season. It's already crazy and chaotic, and they're not going to be back in action until the new year. January 13th in Morocco is when they will be back. Now, with that, we've seen Formula E for about 3 seasons now. Question is, and Sam, I'm going to start with you, electric type of motorsports, is it something that you think can actually catch on? Is it something you think is catching on?
I think it's better than NASCAR, but quite frankly, I think most racing right now is better than NASCAR. So if that answers your question, that's a heck yeah. I mean, why not? I mean, it improves technology from our everyday use to, like, I don't think they should build a battery big enough to last 43 laps. That's pretty cool that the bird is the word wrecked his race car and still came back and won a damn race. I mean,
wait,
Sam, you don't see that.
Why do you think they shouldn't build the battery to last the whole race?
Because I think it adds more to the show.
Okay, but at the same time, pushing the technology, especially if we're going to be going to...
No, I agree. But I feel like the element of having to get out and switch cars, I just think that's a cool thing. I know Nick Rendo would be like, Formula E is not a real sport, because there's racing involved and there's touching between tires and stuff. But, you know, I mean, why not? Well, why not? I mean, look what Elon Musk is doing. I mean, don't you think Formula E has a little thing to do about that? I mean, look at the races they're going to Brooklyn or Manhattan, wherever they go to New York. I don't know.
It's Brooklyn, the hipster area.
That's right.
But now I think the racing has been spectacular. I think the tracks could use some work. Not the locations, but some of the onboard video I'm watching, I don't know how people see the cars at all because it's great that there's advertising banners all over, but the tracks are a little too narrow, no elevation changes, and no good viewing spots. I mean, you need like straight overhead helicopter cams or onboard shots to really get a good look, and I think that needs to change to help grow the sport. The racing's been fantastic. I do like the pit stops. I know a number of people that do not like having to change cars, but I like the idea of it, like a minimum pit time of 60 seconds. You know, you can take longer. You're only going to hurt yourself, but you have to have a minimum to make sure that everyone gets belted in and is safe. So I think that's important, but it also, I don't know. I'm not a fan of the whole, you know, gaining positions on pit stops. I know it's strategy and it can make it exciting, but I care more about the driving of the car than I do about gaining positions by being a faster pit crew. And that also, you have to agree, increases the cost for teams. If you have to pay and pay to get better guys or faster guys at pit stops. Whereas it's going to be back when the Truck Series did competition cautions because they couldn't afford big fancy pit crews. You had it. No, there's a couple guys. If you wanted to use a damn tire iron and, you know, change the tires that way, you're going to go back out where you came in. And we did that at Turkey Derby with the modifieds.
Yeah.
And it
was actually that was a point of consensus from a fan in the grandstands texting me, asking me why is that rule in place. He said because you can't have cars beelining out of the pit area. There's just not enough room.
It's the Morgan Shepherd rule.
Yeah, well, that too. It's going to be interesting to see the continued evolution of Formula E and how electric car racing ends up making its way up the racing ladder. I mean, it just continues to grow in terms of popularity. And again, the big thing is that while you have teams pulling manufacturer support in IndyCar, you have teams pulling manufacturer support in NASCAR. You know, the last big Ford truck team is apparently shutting down. We don't know what's going to happen with that equipment. Manufacturers are dumping money into Formula E. Big league manufacturers. You have manufacturers who are thinking about either leaving Formula One or putting their emphasis in Formula E instead of Formula One. And to me, that's a big deal because they see a bigger payoff on the technological side.
Is Ferrari part of that? Because Ferrari's threatening to leave F1.
there are rumors in that as well. But Ferrari and Red Bull have been threatening to leave Formula One for the last few years, and I don't see it happening.
I don't believe
is
it.
throwing everyone off.
Yeah, the new Formula One logo is forcing everybody to question their judgment as being a part of a series that is that disconnected with their fan base
and their sexualities.
Now,
I don't know where to go with that one. I'm sorry.
Shifting gears,
Nor does
IndyCar. Longtime race official Brian Barnhart is going to be walking away from the IndyCar Series control tower to head up a position at Harding Racing. One of my favorite all-time racing journalists, Robin Miller, put together a great story about TGBB, a nickname which he gave Barnhart almost 23 years ago, the great Brian Barnhart, as he called him, citing a number of poor decisions and race calls, which kind of gave Barnhart a bad name throughout the years. However, as he took a more reduced role in race control over the last few seasons, he seemed to have gained a little bit more notoriety and credibility, and almost to a point where his presence may actually be missed in the IndyCar control tower. The write-up by Miller is at racer.com. You can check that out if you want. Also, if you're looking for another IndyCar-related read, check out David Malsh's story with Sebastian Bourdais and Dale Coyne Racing Engineers as they talk about the nuance of the 2018 bodywork on the car, in which it highlights the points of not only braking and applying to get the throttle to the car, but also the points where you compress the brake pedal and slowly crack the throttle on it. And the detailed description takes the most simplistic point of driving a car and breaks it down to like a scientific notion. And it's fascinating stuff to read. It also goes into great engineering detail. If you're a car guy, I think of Aaron Lineman, who competes in 24 Hours of Lemons, made his Turkey Derby debut. It just seems like something that he would be fascinated with, and I'm sure many of our listeners would as well. And again, that's an article by David Malsher at motorsport.com. I'm just super stoked for this new IndyCar bodywork. It's going to be out of this world.
Are you referencing how they're saying that the drivers in IndyCar are going to get weeded out if they're just the full throttle guys because the cars are going to be that much harder to drive. They're going to have to actually learn how to drive them and be easier on both the throttle and the brake because that downforce is not going to be there to save them.
Depending on who you talk to, some of the terminology that they're using is that the real drivers are going to be found out. The other terminology they're using is that the downforce drivers are going to be exposed. I mean, it almost sounds like there's a little bit of riffraff developing in the paddock between the engineers who believe they have a driver who's got the finesse to balance the, as Robert Miller once famously quoted, brake, throttle, and balls portion of racing, versus some of the other drivers who just know how to hold it wide open and get around a corner, and they happen to put up good results. So it seems like that we're putting it back into the driver's hands, something which NASCAR has been trying to do for years now, and IndyCar may be able to do it in the transition of one season.
So IndyCar may have finally not shot themselves in the foot. And you know what this means, Eric?
What?
This means that Danica Patrick's going to win the Indy 500.
If her talent could back it up, we may see. Still not sure who's going to drive.
Ouch.
I was just saying, watch if this is the big change, and they're going to be finding out exposing all the drivers that aren't really good drivers, and she ends up winning. I'm really curious to see the fan reaction to that.
Maybe she's going to ride with Hendrick.
Stunned. That's all I could say is stunned. Yeah. Now, before we shift our attention to the local segment, a couple of special notes we want to pass along. First of all, rest in peace, Jim Neighbors, the man whose voice dubbed the pre-race ceremonies of the Indianapolis 500. Any of you who know me well enough know how much that ceremony gives me chills, all the way up to the releasing of the balloons when Jim was famously singing Back Home Again in Indiana. He was also famous for his role in the television series Gomer Pyle. Jim, who was a longtime member, in fact, sang Back Home Again in Indiana all the way up to 2014 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Passed away just 1 week ago. Also, get well soon to NASCAR Hall of Famer Jack Ingram, who was severely injured in a highway accident. Initial reports indicate that Ingram may have, in fact, run a stop sign, but we assume accidentally, and then was T-boned in the driver's side door. He's been in the intensive care unit for the last couple of days.
Wait,
and,
a stop sign on a highway?
Well, I call it a highway accident. It was a traffic accident.
Okay.
You got some weird highways down here.
Yeah, down south, it's speed limit's about 65 on some local roads, so you could almost call it a highway. But
okay.
A statement released by the Ingram family says that Jack has been in the intensive care unit. They continue to be cautiously optimistic, but he is in fact improving slightly. So we want to send our best wishes to him as well. And once again, we mentioned at the top of the opener, a huge happy birthday to our brother Neil Rutt III, who is celebrating. I saw a lot of people offer him happy birthdays, sent out to him, and He comes from a very tight-knit family, an extended racing family, always had to offer a helping hand. And for that reason, a lot of people have offered him a helping hand, even up to the limited late model he ran at Turkey Derby this past few weekends ago. So happy birthday, Neil. We love you. Sorry you're not with us to celebrate, but I know you're probably having a good time wherever you may be. Because
you're
that's all
better
you
off
need to
wherever
know
you
how to do.
are. Otherwise, you'd be sitting here listening to Eric Brennan drone on. So, yeah.
I don't think many people realize my first experience with Neil Rutt was as an official, and he told me to go F myself. I don't think many people realize that.
And look at you guys now. Now you just poke fun on the RPM podcast.
Stop whining.
So, with that, first race of the indoor season took place this past weekend in Trenton, and it was a big one. Why? Because it was the first time ever that entire production company elected to try to put on a show on dirt. And it came with a lot of mixed reviews, and we leave with a lot of mixed reviews. And I think, Josh, before we get into our personal experience on the racing weekend, I'm curious to think of what you thought, and Sam, you from a distance, because I'm assuming you've seen some of the highlights of what took place, of the show itself. What do you think? Was it a success? Did they have room to grow, or should it be a one and done?
All right, for me, it was a very huge success. Huge, as they would say. Everybody was talking about that there's going to be a wreck fest and there's going to be lots of flips. I think I saw one flip. There might have been one earlier before I got there. I know I showed up just a hair late, but. Really, the racing was surprisingly clean. Yes, there was contact. There were a few spins. There was a couple cautions that, but that's to be expected with an indoor show on a tight track like that. Really, it was pretty damn good racing. Some great highlights, honestly. Some dumb highlights, too. The finish was absolutely stunning. Eric's buddy D, or Eric's D, was really excited at the end of that.
My boy D. Anthony Gitano.
Yeah, I actually saw him, and some other guy, some D bag, I thought it would be from Staten Island, was actually getting really into it. And when he saw that finish, which I'll let Eric go into more detail of, I saw this guy lean forward, start clapping. He was really into it, and that was great to see. I think you just made a new racing fan with this. So I'm going to say it worked out pretty damn well. The dirt, it seemed to hold up pretty good, I thought. I know they had to rework it. There's a sort of unplanned intermission at one point. They really only worked out the cushion more than anything at that point. But really, all in all, the only thing that I would want is more divisions, because there's really just the one division running. And I want to see slingshots and champ carts and all that out there. Whether or not they have dirt tires, I don't care. Put them out there. I want to see it, because the night was too short for me. So that would be like my downside. The craziest part of the night for me had to be the tow truck cart thing.
The off-road vehicle that just, I don't know if he missed his red light. I don't know if he was just high on adrenaline, but he literally pulled out in front of the entire field. And we almost either saw a tremendously terrible and embarrassing accident or something that would have won the 10 grand on America's Funniest Home Videos, because
they just gone green and we're coming down the backstretch as he drives across in, I guess, 3 and 4 across the track, and missed by inches?
Yeah, Sam, I'm not even kidding. It had to be about 1.5 feet. I mean, that's how close it was.
Us race officials sometimes have to get the attention that Eric Brennan gets like nonstop. So we have to do stupid stuff like that just to get some love.
Touche.
Okay.
Not all of us get paid to just sit there and BS and talk and make buddies with everybody and his D.
So, hold on a second. My buddy D had a really good time. In fact, he was asking me tonight about Allentown, which I'm on the fence about whether or not I'm going to make that trip or not. Atlantic City, he's all on board with, and I may be able to get him out to Wall Stadium Speedway if that's all set in stone for next year. So And honestly, to the people involved in Trenton, take my friend D as a success story. This guy came with me to my first Turkey Derby in 2007, and he enjoyed it. He enjoyed it to the point where, you remember when it was Kevin Flockhart and Jimmy Blewett throwing hands in turn number 3 at the end of that one. And but he never got really the bug to want to come to me and say, hey, when are we going again? Like it was more of a thing to do on a night where he didn't have a lot going on. And to Josh's point, with the finish that we had, and thanks to Josh for being able to help me out with the names that he had, probably courtesy of his area auto racing news, because I was so invested in it. I remember exactly what the cars looked like. I remember exactly what the numbers were. I remember the name of the guy who won. I just couldn't remember who he passed for the win. It looked as though Alex Bright was going to run away with this one, and then a late race restart ended up settling the whole thing. And Whitey Kidd got the restart of his life and ended up taking the lead on essentially a green-white checker. Gave a very emotional victory lane interview, and it really showed that this win meant a lot to him. And he was met in victory lane by Anthony Cecily, former Wall Stadium Speedway track champion, who was spraying the champagne along with him. Cecily was injured in a crash Friday night where he thought he did something to his neck and was supposed to go to the doctor earlier this week to get checked out. So seeing that jubilance and that happiness showed that this race did in fact mean something, had over 90 competitors registered to compete in it, having a thrilling finish in the fashion that you did, and impressing at least one person in the crowd that I know directly who may have made him an indoor race fan for life. Now, I think they did their job.
Now, you neglected to mention how Kidd got into the lead.
Oh, it was the restart was amazing, but pretty much it ended up restarting on the outside. And Josh, I don't know if I can describe it any better. Looked like he washed all the way up to the cushion in 1 and 2, got in the gas, and didn't lift until probably not when he saw Jesus. He probably saw Jesus, Elvis, and every other famous celebrity you could have imagined, because at one point you didn't think he was going to make turn 3. You almost thought he was going to be out in the parking lot at that point, and he pulled it off, and it stuck, and that was all it took.
I'm not going to lie. I did really enjoy watching that pass for the lead. And I'm going to eat my words because I said it was going to be a crap show. It was not a crap show. So props to the Trenton people. It was a good show.
Really and for the record, the three of us have no affiliation with the indoor crew. I mean, I understand that if you listen to us, you say, oh, these guys have a tie in a Wall Stadium Speedway. Of course, we're going to say nice things. I give you pure, raw, and honest honesty, if that makes sense. I think I said honesty too much. But on the indoor show, there's no affiliation here. Now, if you're listening, I would love to announce the next and upcoming indoor shows. Let that be known. It's out in the open. I'm free.
Keep Earl Krause, guys. He does a better job anyway.
I'll give you my business card, whatever you want. I would love to work with Earl on the indoor stuff. We work well together.
He might cancel on you, though.
There is no particular reason. The only thing I will say is that and when we did the show last week, I was at the track. They were prepping it up until 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. Safety crew was there, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. The amount of effort that goes into that show extends beyond when the doors open at 4 p.m. and well beyond when the doors close around 10 o'clock. I think the show was probably over around 9. Incredibly quick show. And Josh, I can't thank you enough for coming out, because my buddy Elliot Wall and I had this brilliant idea to rent 2 suites and call up 40 of our racing family. And Sam, I wish you were closer so you could have came out and had some fun. I mean, I could read off a list of people who were there. Just go ahead and check out social media. You'll see everybody was there, because there was so many people.
Oh yeah, John Lane took some photos for I think most of the people that were in there. So thank you for that. And I mean, you'll get a sense of what it was. And really, the seats were pretty damn good. Just needed to send beer.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on, but my goodness, the waitress was really, really friendly. But the
Eric Brennan
the timing a little bit off. So no, she was a sweetheart.
She was friendly, and my fly was open. Hey,
she was a sweetheart. My fly was not open.
You're just getting to that now.
That stuff, it goes over my head and then it comes back like a boomerang, like 10 minutes later. I don't know how I handle it. But it was a good time was had by all. Take a look at Allentown. I don't know if it's going to be feasible, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
But if Tony Stewart was there, you'd definitely be going.
And then don't forget Atlantic City, too.
Right. Yeah. And actually, speaking of Tony Stewart, he's actually getting ready to go race a sprint car in New Zealand, something that he was never able to do with his enhanced involvement at Stewart Haas Racing and on the Cup side. So he's pumped to be doing that. So there's racing going on all over the place. And Sam, the big thing that you guys are prepping for is the Kart Week at Daytona.
Wait, hang on. Before we get into that, I have one thing I want to say. I had very recently got my little renew subscription thing for AARN, and really they do some excellent work. But I have to make a complaint here. And I think it's a founded complaint because not this week's, but the previous weeks, they had all this wonderful stuff about Turkey Derby and, what a great show it was. And they had tons of pictures and modifieds. I get modifieds are like the big thing. But you get down to some of the, we'll say the lower divisions. I'll accept that. And they have some pictures of the legends. And there's a picture of the four cylinders in here. My complaint is that there is not a single picture of the factory stocks anywhere in this whole issue. Additionally, they they mistakenly put that Elliott Wall swept the weekend when he did get that DQ on Sunday. So the Sunday results are incorrect. The Friday results are absolutely nowhere to be found. And then, to top it all off, they misspelled my last name.
You, of all people?
Two T's.
Two T's, not one. I'm just, but I'll even overlook that if they had even just one picture of the factory stocks in here. So I feel kind of let down, and I might not be renewing now. So that is my complaint. Sorry, everyone. And I'm, rant over. So anyway, on to Sam and what he's doing.
Fair enough for that, Josh. Oh, but by the way, before we do that, Josh, I want to give credit where credit is due. Being that you've had a little bit of time at home, it was nice to see that your factory stock videos started to reoccur, including one from Turkey Derby last year, plus the Friday edition of Turkey Derby this year, where you take the point to include in-car camera, audio from the assistant race director, play-by-play audio, which I am personally grateful for. And if you haven't seen it, you can check it out at the YouTube channel, Crowman. Josh, I always get the numbers wrong. What is the YouTube channel again for you personally?
Crowman943.
There you go. You can check them. I mean, I'm talking heat race, feature event, everything you could ever ask for, all in one sport. And you could check out just how well and savvy Josh's editing skills are, because when you see all that is involved, plus thank you to all the participating drivers who were in it, including Brian O'Shea, who was up front a lot in both of those feature events.
Yes.
The Friday one you can check out right now. Just masterful job, Josh.
Yeah,
so
thank you
for doing that.
I just finished the heats for Sunday's race. I'll be doing the feature probably sometime tomorrow and hopefully have that uploaded in a day or so.
Pumped. Can't wait. And with all that now in the rear view, we look ahead. And Sam, you have been crunching the numbers. You've been on the phone. You've been sending out emails. You've been sending out text messages. You got to talk to somebody super important today, which I think is amazing. The World Karting Association at Daytona, right around the corner. We were just looking at the calendar not that long ago. We're all going to be heading down on the 26th, so about 3 weeks' time. And man, oh man, there's a lot to look forward to.
Well, for those who are listening, we have two IndyCar drivers coming down and racing with us the Daytona Kart Week. And for those who don't know about Daytona Kart Week, the WKA holds the only sanctioned go-kart race allowed in Daytona Speedway. So here's your chance. If you're looking in racing on the high banks, looking to come join us, check out Margay's website for just our arrive and drives. It's a flat fee, and you come and you join us for the weekend. It's pretty exciting race. It's our first race of the season. We have 3 races going on. The road race, the manufacturer cups on the sprint track, which is the small track on the inside of the big track. And then we have the flat track, which is the dirt track outside of turn 1 at the Speedway. So like Eric said, just doing a lot of bookend stuff, making sure everyone's in place and everyone is where it needs to be. I spoke to Juan Pablo Montoya today. He's bringing his son, Sebastian, who I believe is a Tony Kart driver this time around this year, starting out. So a lot of famous, important people, a lot of raw young talent, and Eric Brennan. So what more do you want? What more do you need?
Now,
I will tell you, Josh, you can go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Eric, you got to announce one of the previous WKA events, and I remember you weren't sure exactly how it was going to go, and you described it as being one of the surprisingly very, very competitive from start to finish and through the entire pack days of racing that you've experienced.
I mean, I was able to go back and kind of listen, because this is what one of the best bits of advice I ever got was from Alan Bestwick, who is a hero of mine. And the fact that he even takes the time out of his day or whatever to talk to me just means more than I could ever explain. He once told me, always be your own worst critic. So because of that, I go back and listen to a lot of what I do weeks, months, and sometimes even years in advance, because you'll hear things differently the more time that passes. So I've gone back multiple times, and I've gone to ekartingnews.com, where they store and archive all the audio that I've had. And in that process, I think I announced 19 races, or actually it was 17. It was 17 races on that particular racing weekend. I believe all but 3 came down to a margin of victory of less than 1 second. And I believe that 6 of those were down to the 100th or 1,000th of a second. It is unbelievable how tight, like how close the competition is in the World Karting Association. And it was something I never anticipated. And keep in mind, when we say karting, we're not talking about your go-karts at Seaside or the local boardwalk. Like, we're talking about professionally built kart chassis. Like, it's such a big deal that Fernando Alonso said, hold on, guys, I'm going to build a bigger, more badass kart chassis, which is now being used by a lot of members of the World Karting Association field. So it's a big deal, and there's a lot of money involved and invested on the backside of it, where Bridgestone stepped up, and they sponsored the division last season. I believe they're coming back this year, Sam, unless I'm mistaken. And there's so much involvement by so many people to make this all work, including a lot of kart sales representatives. Yamaha makes a lot of the engines for particular classes in WKA. The level of interest is so high to the fact that when I saw at the end of the broadcast that we did on Saturday, I believe the total hit count on eKarting News was at like 280,000. And I'm like, holy crap, like that's a lot of people. And I had no idea. The racing is phenomenal. The environment is phenomenal. And it seems like there is so much more buzz leading into Daytona than there was at GoPro. Not taking a stab at the final race for GoPro, but I mean, it's Daytona. I mean, there's a reason for this. There's a reason why I'm losing sleep over this. And I'm pumped. I really am. And I can't thank the World Karting Association enough for the opportunity. And I promise I won't disappoint, because I'm going to be like a little kid and I get to talk about race cars. They could be racing bar stools. I don't care. It's Daytona. I mean, I want to go see it. I can't wait. And the more names that come out, I mean, Sam, you mentioned, Montoya having an invested interest there. I believe the other names that came up were Gabby Chavez, who may be participating in the weekend in some capacity. And there was another name that just slipped my mind. Zach Veach, who just signed a deal with Andretti Autosport in the IndyCar Series. So, I mean, it's, and this is something that Eric Graham would always say. It's funny to see how a lot of these big league open wheel stars, just like we talked about Kyle Busch at the top of the show, dropping back down to where they came from, guys who are going to be running 220, 30 miles an hour at Indianapolis on Memorial Day weekend, coming to run go-karts, Daytona International Speedway. Why? Because it means something. So if you're in the area, or you can be in the area, come. You will not regret it.
I just want to see Sam change a few of the cones at the end of one of the straightaways and direct the carts up onto the high banks for one lap.
I will. I will try my best and everything in my power too. And real quick, for those who don't know, the WK has been around since 1972. We are a nonprofit organization serving our racing community. We are proud to be the only karting division series that runs at Daytona International Speedway. We have long-term partners with the WK that's been with us since the inception, it seems. And if you're curious, worldkarting.com. Email me, sambauerjr@gmail.com. Come on out. If you're questioning it, you probably should do it. Like I said, we're very excited. We're very proud to get a lot of stuff together. Everything is falling into place. And I am extremely grateful for the help that we've all had here at the WK, from all our partners to all our interests and stuff like the RPM podcast to help us out getting this our event out there. So thank you, everybody. Should be a good time.
And along the same lines, I also want to bring up the fact that there was some other news that kind of broke as of late, and it's something that's been in the works for a while, but just recently the Garden State Quarter Midget Racing Club has jumped on board with this as well, and that is that we will have quarter midget cars in action at Daytona International Speedway as well, February 8th through the 11th. So this is pretty much going to be on the same weekend as the what do they call it now? It was the Sprint Unlimited last 2 years ago. I don't remember. The shootout. It's basically the shootout. I don't know who's sponsoring it, but the preseason event at Daytona, along with the ARCA race. And there's already a lot of a local invested interest already. Young Ryan Coulthard is going to be competing in that event. As of right now, his entry blank has already been filed by his mom, Shannon, and his father, Warren. So I can't wait to see what Ryan's able to do there because he ran so well at Little Wall this season. And also I understand that our buddy Paul Hartwig is going to be trying to get little Paulie out there as well because of the same reason why we mentioned Daytona is such a big deal for the WKA. It's the world center of racing. It's Daytona. Yeah. And to see the stars of tomorrow and even some of the stars of today, and that's why the WKA is so amazing because it's a hybrid of the two. But the quarter midget kids is really the stars for tomorrow. I mean, look at a lot of the guys that race at Wall, or guys who race on national level. A lot of them started in quarter midgets, the age of 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. So having them in the World Mecca Motorsports at Daytona as well, to me, is a big deal, and it's something that we should follow along with as that time approaches a little more near.
I agree.
That's all I got.
No, I'm with you. I agree, and I think little Paulie is going to be a threat down there. I mean, he's been winning quite a few races, so best of luck to him and all the other competitors down there. And on that note, what have we learned today, guys? Eric?
I learned that Matthews is spelled with 2 T's and not 1.
Just now.
Hashtag thanks. Yes.
Thanks for finally paying attention, Eric.
I knew that. I knew that for a while.
Sam?
I have to behave. I had a bunch of stuff lined up, and I have to behave, Josh.
They involve my fly. Leave me alone.
I have. No, it was worse than that. I have learned today that if you want to go to an indoor race, you got to go with Eric Brennan, and you need to bring beer.
Yes. Is that it?
Perfect.
Yes, to keep it PG. Yes.
I learned that Eric is usually on the bottom.
It always rolls downhill, folks. It always rolls downhill.
I learned that everyone likes making babies.
They do.
I learned that Eric wants to be R. Kelly.
When did I say that?
Yes, Josh. You're peeing on everybody.
The 7 P's. You want the 7 P's tattooed on you.
Oh, yes. My God. That is golden.
Fine, you want to know what, Josh? If we're not behaving, I learned today that Brian France gives awkward handies.
That's pretty good. I also learned that Eric's D had a really good time in Trenton. My
friend's name is, we call him D. His name, all right, listen, I'll go all Staten Island on you. His name's Anthony. We grew up like, if in like a half a mile radius, there's 100 Anthonys that live around here. All right, so his last name is Digatano. We call him D. He's my boy D. He'll probably be the best man at my wedding if I ever get married, whenever that happens. What? Oh, goodness.
All right, let's have the show.
On behalf of Nero III celebrating a birthday, Nick Rendo, still not sure where he is. We're printing up the missing person flyers once again. Josh Matthews, who's holding down the fort, editing all the stuff, doing a great kick-ass job despite how tardy I may be. And Sam for doing everything in terms of rolling out potentially a new website that we'll be able to show all of you folks soon, and all the graphic design work, and just bringing a whole lot of flavor to the show. I'm Eric Brennan. I look forward to seeing you all next week on the RPM podcast. Thank you for joining us. And next time, as Sam said earlier, don't forget to bring the beer. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, you are tardy.